Well, good evening. Welcome to the April edition of Sky Views, brought to you by the Planetarium at the New Jersey State Museum. My name is Bill Murray, planetarium technician at the planetarium. Let's take a look at some of the interesting sights visible in our April skies this year. As the winter begins to fade, the days are becoming warmer and longer, the nights shorter. A new group of stars is becoming visible in our northern and eastern skies. If you look almost directly overhead at this time of year, you'll see a very famous group of 7 bright stars. Many cultures throughout time have had different names for this group of stars. In medieval England, it was known as the plough because of its resemblance to that agricultural tool. In France at the same time, it was known as the wagon, or sometimes the wagon of the King Charlemagne. The ancient Chinese thought of this group of stars as the Emperor's Chariot. To African American slaves in the antebellum South of the United States, this group of stars was the drinking gourd, and they used it to determine the way to the north when they were escaping from slavery to freedom along the Underground Railroad. Here in the United States today, we know this group of stars simply as the Big Dipper. It's not a constellation, though, but an asterism. As we've said before here on Sky Views, an asterism is a group of stars that's famous enough to have its own name separate from the official constellations in the night sky, usually because it's bright and easy to see, and the Big Dipper is probably the most famous of all asterisms. The Dipper is actually part of a larger constellation called Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And as we can see in our graphic here, the Dipper actually forms the back and the tail of the bear. In Greek mythology, Callisto was a nymph who was a great hunter and a companion of the Greek goddess Artemis. She was seduced by Zeus, the king of the gods, and gave birth to a son named Arcas. In order to get revenge, Hera, who was Zeus's wife, transformed Callisto into a bear and set her son, Arcas, who was also a famous hunter, onto the path of the bear so that he would end up shooting his own mother. In order to prevent that fate, Zeus transformed Arcas into a bear as well, and then took both bears and flung them into the sky by their tails. That's why we have 2 very long-tailed bears circling around our northern skies at this time of year. The constellation of Ursa Minor, the little bear, is much dimmer and harder to locate than Ursa Major, the great bear, but it does contain the most famous star in the night sky, even if that star isn't the brightest. Draw a line between the 2 stars at the front of the cup of the Big Dipper, named Dubhe and Merak. They're also known as the pointer stars, and continue that line onward. The first bright star you come to is the brightest star in the Little Dipper, and also the Little Bear, and that is Polaris, the North Star. Polaris definitely is the most famous star in the sky, but it also definitely is not the brightest. So why is it so famous? Well, if you go out at night and watch the stars overhead for several hours, you'll notice that the stars do at night essentially what the sun does during the day. They move from east to west. So stars will rise in the east and set in the west. And in our graphic here, we're showing a picture of that motion called diurnal motion in the region towards the north near Polaris. And as you can see, all the stars except Polaris exhibit this diurnal motion. And that's because Polaris is very close to the point where the Earth's axis points in the sky, called the North Celestial Pole. And that makes Polaris a very good navigational beacon for us here in the Northern Hemisphere. If you can find Polaris using the pointer stars of the Big Dipper, and draw a line straight down from it to the horizon, you can always find the direction of north anywhere in the northern hemisphere here on the Earth. Both Ursa Major and Ursa Minor are circumpolar constellations. They're called that because they're so close to the North Celestial Pole that they never actually rise or set, as other constellations do during the year. Circumpolar constellations can be seen at any time of the year. During the fall, Ursa Major is very close to the horizon and not very good to view. But during the spring, it's extremely high up in the nighttime sky. So you should get a chance to see the stars of the Big Dipper. Now is the time of year to do it. Located near the handle of the Big Dipper are two very interesting deep sky objects to see at this time of year. The first is very easy to find. It's the middle star in the handle of the Big Dipper. That star is actually a double star, and the two stars are called Mizar and Alcor in Arabic. The Arabs named many of the stars that we can see in the nighttime sky. That means horse and rider. Back in medieval times, it was considered to be a test of good eyesight if you can split the two stars and see that they are double. But nowadays, even with glasses on, it's not that difficult a task to do. But if you get a chance to look at Mizar and Alcor through a telescope, you'll get a surprise. And that's because Mizar itself is a double star and easily visible in virtually any size telescopes, making the Mizar-Alcor system one of the more interesting multiple star systems that are visible in the nighttime skies from here in New Jersey. As we'll discuss in more detail next month, springtime is really the best time of year to view galaxies. But as a little bit of a preview to that, we can see one of the more interesting galaxies that are visible this time of year, located very near to the handle of the Big Dipper. That galaxy is called M51, discovered by Charles Messier, and it's just off of the star Alkaid, a little bit south of that star, which is the N star in the handle of the Big Dipper. Also known as the Whirlpool Galaxy, M51 is a face-on spiral galaxy and one of the brightest that we can see from here in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's an interacting galaxy pair. Also shown here is its companion galaxy, NGC 5195. And these two galaxies are interacting with each other, and you can see a trail of stars that are going between M51 and NGC 5195. We haven't had too much to say about planets in our Sky Views talk this month, and there's a reason for that. Most of the planets are grouped in our morning skies, so they're only visible by early risers at this time of year. The one exception to that is the planet Mercury, which makes a brief appearance in our evening skies this month. But if you are an early riser and the skies are clear on the morning of April 18th, I urge you to get out because there's a very interesting sight that's visible. It's not unusual to see 4 planets in the skies at one time, but it is a little bit unusual to see them evenly spaced from each other. And so this is the view that you would see about 10 minutes before 6 a.m. on the morning of April 18th, and you get to see 4 planets in our morning skies. The first and lowest of those planets is the largest planet in our solar system, the planet Jupiter. Above and to the right of that planet is the brightest planet that we can see in our skies here from Earth, and that is the planet Venus, the closest planet to us here from the Earth. Above and to the right of Venus is the very dim planet Mars, which is only beginning its apparition for this year. So it is relatively dim compared to the other planets, but it will brighten and get higher in the skies as time goes on. And above Mars, the planet Saturn, the furthest planet that we can see with our unaided eyes usually from here on the Earth. And so if you get a chance, get out on the morning of April 18th and take a look at 4 planets evenly spaced in our morning skies. Well, that's a look at some of the sights visible in our April skies this year from here in New Jersey. Hopefully the weather will be clear and you'll get a chance to see all of them. From all of us here at the New Jersey State Museum Planetarium, till next month anyway, clear skies.